in our 2-year process here are being sent abroad to go and share their experiences. There is a study that is currently commissioned about the lessons learned from the Gambian model, they now call it. And it's a matter of immense pride for not just those who were involved in it, but the country as a whole, because we are now a model for transitional justice. And what I see through this exercise, increasingly cancelled, is causing me concern, because we are pretty much shooting ourselves in the foot by questioning the achievements of this transitional justice, including the JANNEH Commission, through the injection of personal views that are unnecessarily critical of the process. Unnecessarily, I underscore, and personal views, and that is regrettable. A lot of effort, a lot of thinking, a lot of commitment was put in these processes, and for all of those to be dismissed so summarily by the expression of a personal view again and again and again into a fact-finding process is, to say the least, unfortunate. But nevertheless, you know, I see we are shooting ourselves in the foot in this country, both in and outside government, and that is regrettable. That would be my reaction to you after having heard what you said about the over 100 years of combined experience in the formulation of a TOR. But in any event, the commissioners, including the chair, never raised the issue of TOR. Lead counsel never raised it, and we also didn't see the need, because we, as I said, had the terms of reference in terms of what the commission was expected to do clearly spelled out in the legal notice, and we allowed the commission to be the master of their own proceedings.
All right, I feel compelled to also equally react, and I'm not sure if the chairperson wishes to react, but Mr. Tambedou, this committee was not set up in any way to unduly scrutinize the efforts of Gambians as they exemplified their work in 2017 throughout 2019 through the JANNEH Commission. And a lot of those men and women, those Gambians, are highly commended by the committee, and I'm sure the chair would reiterate the same. The work was incredible. It was difficult times. However, that would not stop us from doing our role. The National Assembly is the people's house. We represent the people's interests. And at this juncture, the view of the international world has to be secondary. And the view of the citizenry must be put on that pedestal and cannot be compromised. And this is the genesis of the discussions here today. And it's not in any way to devalue the work done by the Commission, but to understand the rationale for certain things and to find out what happened to the immense wealth that the Commission set out to recover and how it went about recovering. That is simply the exercise. It is not to shoot ourselves in the foot, in fact. I would say, in fact, the international world should further commend the Gambia for being self-critical of its processes. Anyway, I'll stop it there. Honorable Chair, would you like to weigh in, or should I proceed?
Well, actually, I just wanted to react on, especially the question that you asked the witness on the issue of the TR. I think to establish that, Mr. Tambedou, you will agree with us To you, you might think it's not necessary, but from what is presented to the committee based on the facts, the committee, after reviewing the evidences, because we have seen that that has caused a bit of lapse in the operations of the commission. Now, if you look at the issue of TOR, for example, if I work at the National Assembly and I'm appointed as a human resource manager, kind of, and Madi is appointed as the accountant in the same institution, of course, the appointment letters will refer us to a TOR. I mean, this is going to be an individual TOR, of course. And the letter that we have seen as evidence is, of course, also highlighted, mentioned about a TOR for a particular employee. So if that TOR is specifically talking about the general TOR that the commission should look at, that should have been clear in the letter, but that's not clear. So for us, I think the letter is directing the staff to a TOR that is meant for that particular staff. This is not the case with the evidence that we have. And I think the council is correct to raise that for us to at least, come to a conclusion on that matter. Yes, you might think that it's not necessary at your level, but from the facts, it's not the case.
And if I may just respond to that, Mr. Chair, I believe when council showed me the letter yesterday, I did admit that the reference to a second TOR must have been an error. I believe it was the letter, just for clarity of the record, it was the letter written by the Solicitor General to the members of the Commission and the Secretary. And the reference to the second TOR must have been an error because there was no second TOR. The only TOR that existed was what was reflected in the legal notice. Now, and I said that it was deliberate because we wanted the commission. Because you see, it depends on how you perceive the independence of the commission. One approach, as council says, was to provide these terms of reference to the secretary, for example, so that it would be clear what his role was. And I said, as a measure of further independence for the commission, we allowed the commission to determine how it wanted the secretary and lead counsel to operate alongside it. And it was for the commission to determine that. Those are the facts. Now, whether or not the better approach should have been to provide the, for example, secretary a term of reference or not, it's debatable. It depends on what you want from the commission. At that time, our preoccupation was ensuring independence. And that is why we went beyond our way. In fact, it was unprecedented in the history of commissions in this country to have a commission with 3 commissioners, none of whom were from public office, to have counsel who was not from public office, and to have a secretary who was not from public office. And it was deliberately designed in that way to ensure that not only they were independent, but that there was a perception of independence, including the fact that we left it to the commission to determine their own proceedings and to delineate the different responsibilities for the secretaries, etc. So again, our focus was on independence, and the focus today, 8 years after, is what we should or shouldn't have done in terms of facilitating the operational aspects of the commission. But that was left to the commission.
The focus today, just to set the record straight, is to identify, to find out where the assets identified, sold or disposed of by the commission are. What's the state of them? Were they liquidated? What is the state of the liquidation? But in doing so, we need to understand what processes were put in place. And that's why we are asking how the commission was set up. What did the commission understand were its instructions from the government? If the instructions were flawed, the result will be flawed.
I strongly disagree with the statement that the instructions were flawed. Because as I said, if they were flawed, not only would it have been a
That
failure
was
on the
just an example. Because
okay, it's an example. I wasn't sure whether it was an example or not, but the fact remains this, Council. The commission was set up with primary and secondary objectives. And one of the primary objectives, as far as the MOJ was concerned, was to ensure total independence of the functioning of the commission in a way that was unprecedented in this country. And which is what we sought out to achieve, not just by appointing people who were not from public service, but by allowing the commission to devise its own procedure internally to regulate its own or to regulate the conduct of its own proceedings.
Yes,
sector.
But Mr. Tambedou, that is outside of a TOR, and we will leave this point because clearly we don't agree. But just to be clear, the terms of reference does not speak to the procedure of the commission.
But
it does. Yes.
Then I am getting confused, because if the terms of reference you're referring to are different from the terms of reference that are in the legal notice, then what terms of reference are you talking about now? Are you talking about the job description of the personnel?
I believe that is exactly what the terms of
Also, you're
reference.
talking about.
I could be mistaken. If you have a different view of what.
Maybe that's where the confusion is emanating from. My understanding of terms of reference talks about. It refers to the subject matter of inquiry and the personnel, but not the job description. So terms of reference could include job descriptions. I agree with you in that, but in the broader sense, terms of reference goes beyond just job description. So here you're talking about the job description of who exactly, the secretary. We allowed the commission to prescribe that job description for the secretary and not for the government to decide, because at that point, first, it would have been preemptive to design the job description of the secretary, part of which was already included in the Commissions of Inquiry Act, but we wouldn't want to. So let me break it down this way. Assuming, for your purposes, that we provide a job description to the secretary, and the secretary is, of course, presumed to be bound by the four corners of that job description, and then they go to start their role as secretary, and then the commission at some point, based on an unforeseen situation, wants the secretary to undertake a certain activity which was not in the job description. How would you resolve a situation like that, for instance? I'm just saying these are some of the things that you have to think about. As far as we were concerned, the commission was best placed to determine how best to use the secretary, and we allowed the commission to do that. We didn't want, as I said yesterday, to be prescriptive.
When it comes to the secretary, I could almost agree with you that, yes, the commissioners can weigh in and prescribe additional functions that the secretary should conduct. However, I still want to underscore the fact that you are appointing personnel now. On your yesterday, we spoke about your appointment, and you mentioned that they were headhunted, and you headhunted them because you knew their quality, right? Now, of course, you would have had to reference their qualities to something. You're looking for something.
Yeah.
That's why you went for an individual.
Mm.
You can't look for an individual in vain.
Absolutely.
There's a criteria you're looking for. There's There are qualities that you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who can carry out a specific job.
Yeah.
That specific job is already known to you when you're searching for that person.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm asking is why it was not put on paper. Again, if I may extend to preempt what you might say and to answer what you had already said, it is not putting the commission in a box or a bottle to outline the role of the secretary. For the simple reason that if you're familiar with the terms of references given to civil servants in this jurisdiction, you would know that at the last bottom tail term of reference is always an omnibus term of reference. But of course, the omnibus should be guided. I'm sure you're familiar with the principle of a jus dem generis. And it would be strange for the commissioners to direct the secretary to water the plants at Jammeh Hotel, wouldn't it? So the commissioners do not entirely control the secretary. The secretary is appointed by the president, just like the commissioners were appointed by the president. Now, the president knows what role he wants the commissioners to play, and he knows what role he wants the secretary to play. That is what we're saying should be outlined. Of course, there will be additional ones. And who would you give that to? Since the commission is independent, you would give that control to the commissioners. But you would temper with that control a bit. To say that that control should be in line with the general vision of the government. That this is a secretary, he's not lead counsel, he's not an investigator, etc. Please react.
You will agree with me that the Commissions of Inquiry Act does provide specific responsibilities of a secretary to a commission, right? And you, in your view, you think the ministry should have added additional responsibilities to make sure that at least it was exhausted. Is that your view?
I would blame the ministry here because the ministry was the institution responsible, such as the caretaker to the commission. However, in fact, this responsibility was for His Excellency the President of the Republic. Of course, but it would be unreasonable for me to expect His Excellency to sit and develop a TOR because he has able men and women in cabinet to do that for him. And he has chosen the Ministry of Justice to do that.
Let's stick to the Ministry of Justice. It's safer for all of us.
I have made my statement. It is the president through the ministry.
You haven't sort of, I did say that the Commission of Inquiry Act does define the role of a secretary, doesn't it? You'll agree with me about that.
Yes, it indicates.
And what you wanted in this case is for the ministry to develop on that and provide greater details as to what the secretary was expected to do or not do.
All right. Since I'm expected to agree with you, it seems like the tables have suddenly
No,
turned.
no, I'm just,
I would weigh in on your first one. Yes, I agree that the Commission of Inquiry Act provides for
it identifies the role of a secretary and what it's supposed to do in general.
Yes, and it also identifies the role of a Commission of Inquiry
Yes.
and what it's supposed to do in general.
Yes.
Okay.
And and
Let's go.
yeah, but that's in general.
Yeah.
Administrative component of the commission, in the case of section 200, and to carry out the administrative tasks that they may from time to time be assigned by the commission. That is the role of the secretary, irrespective of the subject matter of the inquiry. So in the case of the commission, the terms of reference will change depending on the subject matter. If it's about, debts, if it's about fire, if it's about finances, you have to adapt. But the role of the secretary remains constant. Now, you may think that it would have been more helpful for the secretary to know exactly what his job description was, but it was enough that he was to carry out the directives or orders of the commission. Now, that in itself embodies any other responsibility that the ministry could have prescribed to a secretary. So it doesn't matter what we say or what we put down in writing. The bottom line, the omnibus clause that you referred to, will be to carry out the or to execute the orders or instructions of the commission as they may from time to time assign to the secretary. So that is pretty much what the role of the secretary is.
Yes, but those instructions from the commissioners are qualified, aren't they? They have to be in the general context of what a secretary ought to do. Again, the commissioners cannot ask the secretary to go and water the flowers at Jammeh Hotel, can they?
It has to be within the
general scope.
Yes.
Within the general scope and nature of what a secretary,
within what was contemplated, yes.
And what was contemplated by who?
By the commission.
By the government, Mr. Tambedou. It's the government who conceived the idea of the commission and not the commission itself.
So let me put it this way. The government took a secretary, handed him over to the commission, and tells the commission, here is a secretary, use him as you see fit. That's exactly what happened here.
And I'm saying that should have not been what happened. What should have happened, so that we can move from this, because it seems like we are at a deadlock. You disagree? I insist.
No, I'm just telling you the facts and the underlying reasons why we adopted that approach.
That's fine. So I'm saying that the secretary should have been told that he is to attend all meetings of the commission. The secretary should have been told that he is to record.
Sorry for my interjection. Are you saying that we should have included in his terms of reference or job description that he should attend all meetings?
Yes.
Now you see right there is.
Can I exhaust the list and then you can?
No, if I that gives me an opportunity to illustrate further my point about interference. Now, if we were to tell the secretary to attend all meetings,
all the sittings of the commission,
all the sittings, all meetings, you said initially, but let's even say all the sittings, and the commission decides that for certain sittings the secretary should not be there for whatever reason, are we not already creating a potential situation where the secretary is saying, my job description includes sitting throughout all the sittings, and the commission is telling me to leave? Right there you have a problem.
Indeed, you have a problem.
But to avoid that kind of problem.
But we don't want to avoid that kind of problem, Honorable. We want that kind of problem. Those are good problems, because if the commission gives the secretary an invalid or an illegal order, the secretary should be brave enough to say that this is not my responsibility. This is the responsibility of such and such.
But you assuming that the commission would be making an invalid or unlawful order at that point. You don't know what the issue would be at that point. It could be for lawful, legitimate reasons.
I would not be assuming, because I would be going by the tenets of Section 6 of the Commission of Inquiry Act, which is an act of Parliament, which dictates how the commission should operate and which dictates the duties of the secretary. So the commissioners, with all due respect, cannot come and abrogate that. That is a provision of law.
Okay. You have made a statement. I don't know how to react to that. So,
would you want me to provide you with the Commission of Inquiry Act?
Oh no, I went through it.
Okay.
Certainly, I don't want this to be illegal. It's not illegal.
That's fine.
It's
I too want to move on. We would leave it to the committee. The fact still remains, from the committee's point of view, TORs were necessary. Now, if the commission decided to build on that TOR and add more responsibility to the secretary's role, well and good. That is what is envisioned. But that all those responsibilities should be in line with what is envisioned by the government and the laws of the Gambia. All right. Let's go back to Misa. That's who we were speaking of. He was double hatting, as you say. By the way, that's a word I've learned today. I'm grateful. She was double hatting, which means she was playing two roles.
Yep.
She was at the Ministry of Justice and she was at the Commission of Inquiry. Now, the committee does not have an issue with that fact simplicity. What the committee has an issue with, and what you need to clarify, is where that dual role goes against what the government envisioned independence. Now, if the public were to get wind of the fact that there's an official of the government who is still in their substantive government position and still also acting in the commission, that would give a perception of, I wouldn't say interference, but not quite an independent outlook. Wouldn't you agree with me?
No, in this case. And I'll tell you why. I think I have said repeatedly here that I instituted a deliberate policy of seconding Ministry of Justice staff to the various commissions as a way to build capacity in the process of these activities. And so you will find a consistent theme throughout the different commissions, be they the Truth, Reconciliation and Reparations Commission, the Constitutional Review Commission, the National Human Rights Commission, even the Fababanta Commission. It was a deliberate policy of seconding Ministry of Justice staff. And in this case, the fact that an MOJ staff was designated as Deputy Secretary to step in for the Secretary in the event the Secretary was indisposed, for the added reasons of ensuring continuity in the proceedings of the Commission, I don't think that would create the perception, at least in the eyes of the public, that there was interference, especially if the practice in this country has been having public officers play a more frontal role, if you like, in commissions of inquiry. In this case, this was a radical departure from that practice, and I don't think that having MOJ staff to deputize for the Secretary would create a perception of government interference.
The idea was that Mr. would be attached to the commission for good institutional continuity. But she was not attached to the commission. She was stationed at the Ministry of Justice and never went to the commission. In fact, the only work she did for the commission was sign vouchers.
She never went to the commission
to do secretarial work.
Well, you see, when you say to do secretarial work, because as deputy who was double hearting, I wouldn't expect her to be engaged in the commission's work on a full-time basis. That would be impossible at that time. And of course improper, because that was not what she was asked to do. But as I said, she was asked to shadow the secretary, to keep tabs on events at the commission. In the event that the secretary was indisposed, we will have somebody who will step in and the proceedings will continue. So she didn't need to be involved in the day-to-day administrative task at the commission as deputy who was double hearting. I think it was, sufficient that she would occasionally go to the commission to keep abreast of events and to be briefed by the secretary and to be assigned as the case may be and as appropriate.
But that's what I am saying. She was not going to the commission for any briefings. She was not going to the commission to be assigned any duties. In fact, from the arrangement, I feel a bit. I feel for the secretary at the time, Mr. Alhaji Mamadi Kurang, because he had a subordinate who was in fact one of the approvers of his allowance, his pay and his staff's pay, which arrangement was quite messy if you look at it, because the DPS is the one in charge of the vouchers, of all the approvals. Any payments that need to be made to the commission need to be approved by the DPS, and here's the DPS being the deputy of the secretary, who should raise vouchers for her for our approval.
I think it actually assisted in ensuring a smooth running of the commission, because right there you have the person that you need to get hold of if you needed to process certain things through the ministry, who was at hand to support you. So that was one of the objectives of getting the DPS to act as deputy to the secretary.
But she wasn't at the secretary.
But as far as I knew, as far as the reports that came to me, she was going to the commission occasionally in fulfillment of that role that we had envisaged.
Reports given to you by whom?
It would be my staff at the ministry, my senior staff.
Your Solicitor General?
Certainly, including the Solicitor General. That would be the report that I would receive about her going there. But you see, as I said right from the start, it's one thing to assign work to someone and another thing to have that work carried out in a way that you may believe to be inadequate now, or we may believe to be adequate at the time. So it depends on the amount of information that you're receiving as feedback. But as far as I was concerned, as far as I knew, DPS would occasionally go to the commission, and that is what distinguishes her from the rest of the MOJ staff who were posted at the commission. They stayed there throughout and only occasionally visited the ministry. So their roles were reversed with that of the DPS.
And you didn't see that there could have been a possible conflict of interest there?
Between
perhaps
who,
let me withdraw that question. Let me just put it in this way. You see, when the committee had the benefit of having Mr. Alhaji Mamadi Kurang before us, Mr. Kurang admitted that it was quite awkward that he was given a deputy that he could not interact with. She was not at the commission. She was stationed at the Ministry of Justice at all times until Mr. Kurang left. In fact, her only interaction with the commission was to ensure that payments were made. Now, I've been dancing around this point that the commission should have been independent and the personnel in the institution should have been independent.
You don't think the commission was independent?
To a large degree, no.
You mean, because council, no, let's not, because this is an important point here.
And it's a point we will come back to again and again.
Well,
we cannot exhaust it
no, but
now.
no, but we're there now. When you say independence, are you saying that the commission's ability to process the evidence, to review the materials, and to make their recommendations based on that evidence was somehow prejudiced or not based on objective criteria?
Now you see,
because for me that's where I'm focusing on independence.
I was going to say unequivocally yes until you invoked objective criteria. Now you see, I would stick to yes now. Like I said, we would circle back on this issue severally. So this issue would not be exhausted now. I believe the government at some point interfered and got its way with the commission. And we'll get to that.
Okay. I'll wait for that point.
Just to point out that it wasn't only Ms. Saad that caused confusion, because the secretary, in fact, from his testimony to this committee, was not sure whether Ms. Sar was in fact his deputy or not. Ms. Sar was also not sure whether she was to deputize for Mr. Kurang. In fact, what she told this committee is that there were 3 deputies. And she said that the assistants were deputizing on the operations while she deputized on payments. But in fact, she did not deputize on payments. She led on payments because Mr. Kurang had no say what payments would be made.
You know,
he was not the approving authority.
You know, council, Mr. Kurang was not just an accountant. He was an administrator of a school, Jollof Tutors. He was an experienced administrator. And if he had issues about running the secretariat, he certainly never raised it with me. And I have reason to believe that he never raised it with the Solicitor General.
Which is good.
Who would have raised it with me?
Which is appropriate.
Well, no, it's not. Because if you were saying that those issues created problems and we wanted to solve problems, that's what the ministry was there for. And we weren't actively engaged in the commission's proceedings, but where there were problems, we would intervene and fix those problems. And so if there were problems in his secretariat, I think the proper thing for him to have done was to bring it to my attention or to the attention of the Solicitor General, or indeed to the attention of the commissioners, especially the chair. Now, to this day, up to this point right now, the only challenges that I was made aware of were logistical challenges to secure logistical support from the ministry, as you said, stationery, vehicles, fuel, etc. But no complaint was ever made about the running of the secretariat. That's the first point. The second point is it wasn't Mr. Kuang who requested for a deputy. So if the ministry had not designated Mr. Motulaisa as deputy, there wouldn't have been the question of deputy. So it was not a request of Mr. Kuang. We provided a deputy for a legitimate purpose, which was to ensure that there was capacity, sustainable capacity built within the ministry for future commissions. But to expect the deputy at that time to assume fully the functions of a deputy in the usual way, that was not what we envisaged. Again, I keep saying we wanted her to keep an eye on the commission so that in the event she was needed, she would step in. So keeping an eye is different from actively carrying out your work as deputy, and that's why I said she was double-hearting. Her role was different from the role of the other MOJ staff who were posted at the commission and who were spending most of their time at the commission rather than the ministry.
So she was not really a traditional deputy.
Oh no, she was. That's why I used the word double-hearting.
She was not.
She was not your traditional deputy. No.
So how was she supposed to receive that capacity that you intended her to receive if she was not involved with the commission?
We were making the most of the situation at the time. We couldn't afford to deploy her full time to the commission. We needed her at the ministry. We had already depleted our resources, particularly administrative resources, by sending secretaries, admin officers, the messenger, the clerk, our drivers. So at that point, what we wanted was for her to, it was not the ideal, I agree, but it was the best of the situation that we had. And so we would ask her to keep an eye from a distance, if you like. We were trying to make the most of the situation at the time.
To keep an eye for who?
For the ministries to be able to acquire experience in the course of that process.
If I were to suggest that it were to keep an eye, to keep tabs on the commission, what would you react to that?
Do you really know the personality of Miss Shah? Do you think Miss Shah would be the one we would send to the commission to keep an eye on the commission?
I don't.
She's a very shy and timid person.
Really?
She is not one, she is not that type, and two, again, you imputing bad faith on the ministry. Why would we want to keep tabs on the commission?
And
to do what?
Mr. Lambert, I did not impute.
No,
I
but
said,
to what end? To
if
keep
I
it,
were
to
suggest, what would you say? That was the question.
Even the thinking is a bit cynical. Why
we
would
have
you?
to. We have to.
Yeah, well,
we have to be, in being critical, you must be cynical at times.
Well, to keep an eye for what? To keep an eye for what?
To
To
keep
look
tabs
at,
on the
to
commission.
keep tabs. How? With what objective in mind?
With a control hat.
Control
on.
with the chair, Mr. Jammeh as chair.
Again, I don't know Mr. Jammeh's personality.
Maybe that's why you're asking a lot of the questions you're asking.
I'm asking a
about
lot of the
commission.
questions because of the evidence I received.
Well, that would actually even be disrespectful to Mr. Jammeh that someone would be keeping tab on him. Mr. Jammeh is a man of high repute in this country, and
I do not suggest
I
that he
wouldn't.
is not.
I wouldn't disrespect him in that way, even.
Council,
Yes.
can I comment, please?
Yes.
Honorable, I think it is for so long that we have been around the impartiality of the commission, and the issue of Mr. Jammeh have been coming repeatedly. I just want to refer your mind, or just for you to guide me, because I would like to understand what understanding do you have around the Justice Signature Commission?
the Justice Singate Commission.
Yes, please.
Council, I am not au fait with the facts or proceedings or conclusions of that commission. I'm afraid I am not in a position to help you on that.
I will appreciate as we progress if you can reflect on that and also look at those that are adversely mentioned in that commission. I believe it is going to help you in this proceeding and also help you to avoid making certain justifications as a senior legal practitioner. Thank you.
Maybe can I make a comment in response to that? And this would be my comment, and it's a general comment. Particularly the legal processes that occurred in this country under former President Jammeh between 1994 to 2016 are so fundamentally flawed that I, in my individual and personal capacity, will not give any measure of credit to those processes, because we know, we have all been here for 22 years. We know the state of governance in this country. We know how the judiciary was emasculated. That is not a secret. I mean, if you read the report of the National Stakeholders Conference on Human Rights and Justice that I referred to yesterday, which I hosted in May 2017, where including members of the National Assembly were there, youth groups, women groups, the Bar Association, the judges. You should read that report and see how there was consensus around the state of the law in this country under former President Jammeh. And so I personally will not give any weight to processes like that that were devoid of the most fundamental fair trial standards anywhere in the world. So I will not use that as a yardstick to judge the character of others during that period. And that is why we initiated a transitional justice process to right the wrongs of the past, including legal reforms and judicial reforms. So I personally will not even bother looking at the reports like that.
Honorable Tambedou, for me, I will still stand in my position, and as a young person, I wouldn't think that would be a fair comment. The reason why I am making this submission is, even though we are not given regards to whatever legal precedent that have occurred during Jammeh's days, let's not forget the fact that even the JANNEH Commission that was constituted with the spirit of making reforms were driven by the 1997 Constitution. And as such, the 1997 Constitution is a doctrine that I would in fact say Jammeh was the custodian, and it still remained to exist as the laws of this land. So are you telling me, as a young person, even the Constitution that is guiding me, for the fact that it was a document that was kind of amended during Jammeh's days, I shouldn't even believe in it? Because then it creates flaw in whatever we are doing, including the efforts that you were making around transitional justice.
Sorry, Honorable. Mr. Tambedou, I don't want us to get into that, please. I think that is outside the mandate of the committee. No, yeah, that's that discussion. Council, can you proceed, please?
Thank you, Honorable. Now, we were speaking of Ms. Ramatulai Sar. And I had mentioned that there were several other staff that were stationed at the MOJ, but acting for the commission.
Apart from Hamatullah Sir,
Yes.
it will be the other way around. They were posted at the commission and occasionally would come to the MOJ for their personal businesses, but they were posted permanently at the commission.
Who would you be referring to?
I would refer to the admin assistants, I would refer to the messenger, I would refer to the drivers, the vehicles, and of course the lawyers. 2 or 3 of the lawyers were seconded to the commission.
All right. My question still, in fact, I hadn't asked the question yet. I was still building up and saying that, in fact, there were more people than just Ramatullah Assad who were stationed at the Ministry of Justice.
Like who?
And I will get to that. Stationed at the Ministry of Justice, but were personnel of the commission. And in fact, the commission itself was confused about their status. And this is why the committee wants to deal with this issue. You have mentioned that public perception was key amongst the considerations, and it would help to clear this issue. I would ask the committee secretariat to provide the witness with MOJ R1 and MOJ R2.
Yeah.
For better sequence and understanding, I advise that you read MOJ R2 before you read MOJ R1. But for the record, as you're looking for the document, MOJ R2 is a request from the Commission of Inquiry. Rather, MOJ R1 is a request from the Commission of Inquiry. So scratch my advice. You can look at them in order. MOJ R1 is a request for confirmation of staff. The commission, Secretariat, we have a copy for you if you wish. MOJ R1, perhaps let me allow the document to come. I'll give you 30 seconds to just before I pose my question. In the meantime, Honorable Chair, if I could get an indication of when the High Table wishes for us to break for lunch, should we go at 2:30 or 2? 2 o'clock.
Yep.
You fine? Yes, you can hold on to it for now. So just to explain, but MOJ R1 is pretty short. I believe we can read that one out. If you could do the honors.
You want me to read?
Please go ahead.
No problem.
Just the dates, the addressee, who it's signed by, who it's going to.
It's dated 5th of November 2018. It's addressed to the Solicitor General and Legal Secretary at the Ministry of Justice. And it's authored by Hematul Isa, the Assistant Secretary to the Commission. I am directed to kindly request you to confirm that the undermentioned persons are staff members of the JANNEH Commission of Inquiry. And the...
You need not name them.
Okay.
All right. You see, don't you find this cynical?
As someone who has spent some time in the public service, no, I don't find it cynical. I find it very normal, not surprising at all.
So you find that over a year
Mm-hmm.
after the commission was set up and is operational,
Yeah.
the commission doesn't know its staff.
You see, that is because you're reading this literally.
I am reading it literally.
And I guess my role here is to make you understand and provide the context.
But the words are clear.
Let's just say, that's why I said, based on my experience in the public service, I understand where you're coming from. Let's just say if I were to write this letter based on the response that the Solicitor General gave, I would word the letter differently. But I'm not the author of the letter. Mr. Mutlaisa is the author of the letter. But if you look at the response of the Solicitor General to the letter, you will understand what Mr. Mutlaisa was driving at. You can deduce that from the response of the Solicitor General.
And from the response of the Solicitor General, which is MOJR, 3R2.
Yeah.
You can give a synopsis.
The Solicitor General is pretty much saying to the Commission of Inquiry that these are the focal points for these activities at the ministry. So when it comes to procurement, X person is the focal point for procurement for the Commission at the ministry. When it comes to financial issues, X person is the accountant at the ministry who's the focal point for the Commission for that. And then when it comes to the vehicles and the drivers, X person is your focal point at the ministry for transport. So you can see this is what the Solicitor General is saying. And I think the Solicitor General very well, like me, understood exactly what Mr. Mutlaisa was saying in her letter, even though I would have written it differently.
All right. I'm going to make a proposition and ask you to comment on the proposition. Here is a letter from the commission inquiring whether three staff are actually part of them.
Yes.
I deduce from that that the commission was confused about the role of these people. Again, we go back to the TORs, right?
No,
It was not clearly delineated, but fine. You will have an opportunity to comment on that. But then the response also is mind-boggling because, firstly, I will now read the response verbatim. This is the letter by the Solicitor General at the time, Mr. Cherno Marera. And paragraph 2 says, kindly be informed that since the inception of the Commission of Inquiry, the aforementioned names have been part and parcel of the operations of the Commission in addition to their daily duties of the ministry. So again, we have got 3 other people who are double-hearted.
No. Read that again.
I read it again.
They have been part and parcel of the operations of the commission.
Yes.
They are not members of the commission. They are not members of the secretariat. They are part and parcel of the operations of the commission because...
So the operations of the commission were being conducted from MOJ.
The financial operations of the commission, absolutely. That's what we've said right from the start.
Yes.
It's the MOJ that would go to the Accountant General's office to get the funds and then transfer that to the commission.
Fair enough. I give you that for a second. Let's look at the 3 personnel. Mr. I did not want to say the names, but now we do. Mr. Juf was part of the accounting team, right?
At the Minister of Justice, he was the accountant.
He was the accountant.
A very helpful accountant, I have to add.
Great. Kudos to Mr. Juf.
Yes.
Mr. Seka was not part of the accounting.
He was a procurement officer.
He
at
was
the
a
ministry.
procurement officer.
Yes.
So that's not part of the finance. That is procurement.
Yes.
Procurement was procurement for the commission was happening from MOJ, not just accounting.
No, this is how it worked. When the commission requests for supplies of materials,
Yes.
right, it is for the MOJ to provide those materials. But the MOJ is guided by government regulations on the purchase of materials. And so if the materials that the commission requested are materials that are the subject of a procurement process, then it was for the ministry to acquire those materials through that procurement process and then supply it to the commission. That's how it worked.
Fair enough. That is not in
So the
dispute.
commission did not have its own procurement officer or processes.
Okay. But from the letter, Mr. Juf, Mr. Seka, Mr. Gassama
Yes.
were part of the operations of the commission.
Yes, because the operations, some of them were conducted from the ministry. The fleet of vehicles to be given, the fueling of those vehicles, the monies to be taken from the accountant general's department and given to the commission, the procurement of materials that the commission would need would be done through the ministry. That's why they were part of the operations of the commission.
Wouldn't you say they were part of the operations of the Ministry of Justice and not staff of the commission? Because the letter,
no, they are not staff of the commission. That's not what the letter says.
the letter in fact confirms that.
It says they are part and parcel of the operations of the commission.
Okay.
Does
Now,
it say they are staff of the commission?
let's go back to, yes, it does.
Where?
I'll show you in a
Okay.
second. MOJ 3R1 is the prompting letter, right? It is
Right.
prompting it, right?
Yes.
And the prompting letter says request for confirmation as a heading. And it goes on to say, I am directed to kindly request you to confirm that the undermentioned persons are staff members of the JANNEH Commission. Very clear, very simple language. Kudos to Ms. Sar, by the way.
That's why I said to you, if I haven't looked at the response from the Solicitor General, if I were to write this letter, I would word it differently. But
Yes.
people write letters in.
But since yourself and the Secretary General understood,
and the Solicitor
was
General,
meant.
yes, we did understand what
then
was meant.
the Solicitor General should have made that position clear in his letter. But in his letter, in fact, he confirmed.
Now, what the Solicitor General did was to respond in a diplomatic way. You know, sometimes you don't have to say things explicitly. What matters is you have addressed the issue in a way that you
The
understand
trend is
it.
that at the time, nothing was made explicit.
No, it was not about things being made explicit. I know when you want to go back to the terms of reference, I'll not allow that. But the
Okay.
fact is this: when you're working in public service, you get, and it's part of the experience of public service, you get to a point where you understand some of the challenges that people have, and you adapt in the best way that you can. You know, Council Dibba, not everyone is as gifted in articulating themselves in the Queen's language as you are. And so when you are in the public service, you go to learn that people communicate differently, but you know exactly what they're driving at, and you respond and address what they're driving at without pointing out to them that that you would have preferred to write it in a different way. But that's why as soon as I read this and I read the response of the Solicitor General, I knew exactly what Ms. Shah meant.
So were they staff of the commission or not?
Oh no, they were not staff of the commission.
So they were never paid any honorarium for the commission and whatnot.
No, be careful. Just not being staff of the commission doesn't mean they will not be paid honoraria or whatever. If they were part of the operations, I don't know how honorarium payment is determined in the civil service. That's not for me. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were part of the operations of the commission and they were paid honorarium. I would not be surprised about that, even though they were based at the ministry, because the perception is that once you are once you are expending your time on work that is not strictly speaking within the routine parameters of your assignment, then you demand honoraria. And I believe I wouldn't rule it out if they were paid honoraria. But just because they were paid doesn't mean they were staff. They could have been paid honoraria on the basis of their involvement in the operations of the commission. Because these three, based on my experience about the workings of the commission and our interactions with third parties, they must have had a lot to do. So don't catch me that they are staff because they were paid on the area. That would not be the basis for being staff.
Okay. All right. Let's try and make traction. Since I have Honorable Chair, it was 2 o'clock that we agreed, right? All right. So I will not delve into new issues, but perhaps maybe lay the foundation.
Before we...
Yes. I don't believe we'd finish, but we can try. Was Ramatullah Sar ever given an appointment letter for when she was deputy secretary?
I would, I mean, I see her sign as assistant secretary, so she is assistant secretary rather than deputy secretary. I mean, this is what the letter says here. So maybe we should stick to the word assistant secretary rather than deputy secretary.
Well, she was deputy secretary.
She was deputy secretary. Okay.
And then later on, assistant secretary, which we will come to.
It can be interchangeable, but that's not really the crux of the matter here. Was she ever given an appointment letter? I would assume so.
Ms. Sar's evidence is that she was never given an appointment letter, nor that you are.
Well, I wouldn't be the best person to know how Ms. Sar was informed about her role at the commission.
Ms. Sar would disagree with you. In fact, in Ms. Sar's testimony, you would be the perfect person to tell us how she was informed, because from her evidence, she was ushered into your office, and you informed her that she would be going to the commission of inquiry. It's a temporal job. She asked what are her terms of reference and where is her letter of appointment. And she was told that it will come in due course.
Yeah. You know, Counsel, in a typical professional setting, you don't just spring things up at personnel. You have a chat with them first, even before the official communication is conveyed. And that's a practice that I have had consistently. So I will not rule out. In fact, I would confirm that I would have had that discussion with her about her appointment, and then inform her that the official communication will be forthcoming. Now, whether or not that official communication was ultimately delivered, I can't confirm, because I would not follow to confirm whether that communication was written or not. All I know is I would have, of course, conveyed my decision to her boss, who would have been responsible for writing her appointment letter. And I would be surprised if that appointment letter was not written. I would be very surprised.
Just to confirm that surprise, it was never written for her subsequent appointment, as it was never written for her initial appointment.
Her subsequent appointment was not also written?
Yes.
Okay, I'm learning that for the first time. Anyway, but in any event, like I said, I would be surprised. That's the first thing I would say. But that in any event, giving the pressures at the ministry, giving the work that we had to do in those early days, those could have been, things could have fallen through the cracks. And I think it would not be unreasonable to say that. I think there were things that we could have done, we didn't do, we missed, naturally, because as I explained at the time, we were under a lot of pressure. Reason why I had to, again, I keep saying I had to outsource some of our primary responsibilities at the ministry.
All right. So perhaps out of courtesy, I'll give you a heads up that after the break, I wish to discuss about the removal of the first secretary and the assumption of Ramaphosa Sarr as substantive secretary. And Honorable Chair, from your direction, it's 2 o'clock. If you wish for us to take a break, we can take it now. If not, we can proceed.
Oh yes, I wish we go on break since we are anticipating a long day, so we need break. And I would have proposed that we come back at 3:30.
Yes, that's fine. We can meet at 3:30 on the dot.
3:30.
Hour and a half.
Because usually
On the dot.
we'll go out for prayers and lunch. Lunch will be late. So to cover up that, we don't want to keep people waiting. So 3:30 at least lunch would have been here. Okay, well, cancel after the consultation. We'll come back at 3 o'clock.
Great.
Mr. Tambedou, we're breaking until 3 o'clock, and you can join us for lunch as well. Meeting adjourned till 3 o'clock.